All right, 2 Chronicles 9, let's call this one once again, For Now, but subtitle it Whatever, as we look at this chapter in which the Queen of Sheba comes to visit Solomon and eventually get him to offer her whatever she wants. But in order to get there, she is going to have to establish some trust, which she does in this chapter, where we are going to see not only the story or the retelling of the story of the visit from the Queen of Sheba, but once again, a description of the opulent wealth that Solomon was able to achieve at his height. Woven through all of that, again, is the sub-theme of his bond or relationship with Hiram, the king of Tyre, as the chapter concludes with talking about Solomon's death, leaving out something you might have noticed, which is the story of his decline. Something that this chapter is going to say there are other books, or there's at least one other book that is going to talk about his decline and the relationship between he and Jeroboam before that becomes the relationship between Jeroboam and Solomon's son Rehoboam. But for this one, they're choosing to focus on his successes. And in this chapter, as we mentioned, it's going to start out by talking about in the very first verse how the Queen of Sheba does not come trusting Solomon, but she comes to establish trust in the early part of the verse by testing him with difficult questions. But by the time we get to the end of verse 1, it's going to say this: she told him all that was on her mind. And we mentioned that before in passing in the previous telling of this story, understanding that she wanted to test him to find out if he was the genuine article. But her reluctance did not prevent her from being candid. And her candor is what seems to have opened the door to establishing trust in just this short interaction she has with Solomon. Because it's later on going to say, much like the first telling that we saw of the story in 1 Kings chapter 10, that she says, the half was not told to me. So in testing him, she had her expectations exceeded, which is what we focused on in the lesson on 1 Kings chapter 10. This time we want to focus on, as we mentioned, though, what we'll see down in verse 12, where it says, and King Solomon gave to the Queen of Sheba all that she desired, whatever she asked, besides the gifts that she brought to him. Understand what they're saying, ladies. Let me just talk to the ladies for a second. He offered her whatever. And so to the degree that Solomon might be played out as something that is nowadays called a simp, that's one thing. There are a lot of women who are skilled at getting a man to open his wallet just because they're thirsty or desperate. And the older I get, the more I sympathize with being thirsty and desperate. But Solomon was not a simp, to the tune of eventually having 1,000 women, roughly 300 wives and 700 concubines. So he wasn't simply offering whatever to that many women because he wasn't going broke 1,000 times over. But he recognized in the Queen of Sheba something that was worth trusting to that degree. And she established that trust in much the same way Solomon established trust with Hiram, understanding that in his early dealings with Hiram, he told Hiram what was on his mind. He was candid with him so that Hiram was able to send him a skilled craftsman who wasn't just skilled to get the work done, but he had a potentially similar vision to what Solomon had, so that to his skills, he could add a level of care that would take his expertise to another level. And likewise, the Queen of Sheba is trusting Solomon with a level of candor that allows him to answer all of her questions fully. But not only answering all of the questions that might have been troubling her, by the time she was ready to leave, trusting her enough in return for her trust to offer her whatever she wanted, which struck me as offering another perspective on one of my dead horse issues, integrity. Meaning, we often talk about integrity as an obligation, but we are getting the chance to see in the Queen of Sheba the way that integrity established a trust that opened doors that she never could have imagined before she met Solomon. And so by trusting the right person enough to be genuine with them, she opened up doors that she might have honestly closed by trying to be either manipulative or doing things that would have compromised her integrity, reminding me of something I was told way back when I first entered the workforce by somebody who wasn't even a Christian. He said, in this job, people don't have enough time to double check you, so you walk into it with a level of trust that opens all kinds of opportunities for you. But once that trust is lost, you may never be able to get it back. And that struck me as a lesson that is so relevant for today, in a time when we enjoy the freedom to say whatever we want at the expense of closing doors we may never be able to open again.